Return of the Jedi wasn't just the final film of the original trilogy, it was the culmination of the entire mythological architecture George Lucas spent years carefully constructing. The film didn't simply continue the story of Luke Skywalker, it concluded the generational tragedy of Anakin Skywalker, resolved the philosophical failings of the Jedi, shattered the tyranny of the Sith, redeemed the Skywalker bloodline, and restored moral balance to a galaxy that had been collapsing under the weight of corruption and fear for decades. It was the ending Lucas had been building toward since the first frame of A New Hope, long before the prequels existed. And the ending, the prequels later retroactively validated with almost mathematical precision. Whether audiences realised it or not, ROTJ wasn't the end of a trilogy. It was the end of Star Wars. Luke Skywalker's arc closes with mythic finality in ROTJ. His entire journey, from naive farm boy yearning for adventure to the fully realised successor to the Jedi legacy, reaches its ultimate moment not when he defeats Vader, but when he chooses not to. When Luke stands over his fallen father, lightsaber in hand, rage boiling in his eyes, he's repeating the same moment that broke Anakin years earlier. He's inches away from becoming the same creature of fear and violence the Jedi once lost to darkness. And then he stops. He chooses compassion over power, mercy over dominance, identity over destiny. He refuses to become a weapon of either the light or the dark. That singular decision fulfills the prophecy the Jedi misunderstood for generations. The Chosen One would bring balance, but not alone. Luke's act of defiance completes what Anakin could not. It ends the cycle of violence the Sith relied on. Luke's story can't continue past this point because there's no lesson left for him to learn, no deeper truth to discover. His myth is done. Anakin Skywalker's arc ends with equal finality, perhaps even greater. From the moment he was introduced in The Phantom Menace, retroactively, Anakin's story was defined as a tragedy. The gifted child enslaved by fear, manipulated by systems, seduced by power, and ultimately crushed by the weight of his own desperation. ROTJ completes that tragedy by allowing him one final choice, one that mirrors Luke's, but from the opposite side of the moral spectrum. When the Emperor tortures Luke, Anakin is given his last chance to break free from the prison he built around himself. And he does. Not through prophecy, not through destiny, through love, through the bond he never truly lost, through the part of himself the Jedi denied and the Sith exploited. When he kills Palpatine, he doesn't simply destroy the head of the Empire. He destroys the ideology that consumed him. Vader dies, Anakin returns. And because of that, the myth ends. His death isn't a cliffhanger. It's closure. The Emperor's defeat seals the saga's cosmic arc permanently. Palpatine wasn't just a villain. He, Aikaku, was the embodiment of the Sith's philosophy, the architect of the Republic's collapse, the puppet master behind every major conflict across 3 generations. His death isn't the elimination of a tyrant, it's the elimination of an entire theological system. The Sith are finished, not temporarily scattered or weakened. Finished. Their lineage, their teachings, their influence evaporate with Palpatine's fall. This isn't a to-be-continued ending. It's an exorcism. Once the Sith are gone, the story has no foundational conflict left to explore. Any attempt to resurrect the Sith in later stories inherently contradicts the intended narrative finality of ROTJ. That's why his return in later material feels like narrative vandalism, because ROTJ already wrote the only ending the Sith myth could have. ROTJ also provides sweeping closure for the galaxy itself. The destruction of the second Death Star isn't a tactical victory. It's presented as a symbolic liberation. The Empire doesn't fall because of a battle. It falls because the galaxy rises. On Endor, on Coruscant, on Naboo, on Tatooine, on Bespin, across worlds connected by shared suffering. People celebrate because the tyranny that defined their lives is finally over. ROTJ doesn't frame the Empire as wounded or retreating. It frames it as finished. The fireworks aren't just aesthetic. They're thematic punctuation marks declaring the saga's political arc complete. Once the Empire falls with such finality, continuing the story requires artificially inventing new galactic threats, which, in storytelling terms, is a downgrade from the conflict ROTJ resolved. The emotional closure is even more decisive. Luke sees the four spirits of his mentors, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin, at peace together for the first time. This single image answers every question the saga posed. Can the fallen be redeemed? Can the Jedi legacy survive? Can the Skywalkers heal? Can balance be restored? Yes. All of it. That glowing moment doesn't invite continuation. It signals completion. It tells the audience without words that the story has come full circle. The mentor who once guided him in life now watches over him in harmony. The father he struggled to understand now stands beside him as the man he was meant to be. The cycle is broken. The myth is whole. ROTJ even concludes thematic arcs the prequels wouldn't introduce until decades later. The Jedi's failure to guide Anakin, resolved. The prophecy, fulfilled. The consequences of attachment, reframed. The corruption of the Republic, undone. Palpatine's decades-long manipulation, thwarted. The cycle of darkness, shattered. The mistakes of the Jedi Order, redeemed through Luke. Once these threads tie together, the mythological spine of the entire saga snaps into place. No sequel can follow this because ROTJ doesn't leave narrative oxygen. It doesn't leave philosophical tension. It doesn't leave unfinished business. It closes every door, locks every window, and turns the lights off beautifully. Even the trilogy structure reinforces finality. A New Hope introduced innocence and potential. The Empire Strikes Back revealed consequence and growth. Return of the Jedi delivered resolution and transcendence. That's the mythic rhythm of a complete epic. Ending the story here isn't just satisfying, it's correct. Anything after ROTJ isn't the next chapter. It's an entirely different book pretending to be a sequel. ROTJ ended Star Wars because it achieved something no modern franchise allows. Closure. Complete, earned, emotional, philosophical closure. It closed the Skywalker myth. It closed the cosmic conflict. It closed the political struggle. It closed the generational trauma. It closed the prophecy. It closed the Force. Star Wars didn't need anything after Return of the Jedi because the story had nowhere left to go. Not from lack of imagination, but because the myth had already reached its perfect ending. And when a myth ends perfectly, continuing it can only diminish it, because perfection, by its nature, is final. Return of the Jedi achieved something almost no modern blockbuster franchise is willing to attempt. It concluded its story with absolute finality, not the illusion of finality, not a temporary victory or a cliffhanger disguised as closure. A genuine ending, emotional, thematic, philosophical, and narrative. And that finality is exactly why nothing that came after ROTJ could ever match it. Because continuing a myth after it has already completed its arc doesn't build on what came before. It unravels it. ROTJ ends with a tone no sequel can replicate. The rare, quiet triumph after generational suffering. Luke has confronted his lineage, rejected the darkness, saved his father, and restored the core moral philosophy of the Jedi. The galaxy erupts in celebration not because another battle has been won, but because the galaxy senses that the story itself has been resolved. The rebellion isn't merely victorious, it is vindicated. The Skywalkers aren't just redeemed, they are healed. The prophecy isn't partially fulfilled, it is complete. You can't follow equilibrium with escalation without betraying the equilibrium itself. And that is the core reason every post-ROTJ story feels like an echo rather than a continuation. Every major character in the original trilogy reaches an organic, permanent destination. Han Solo's journey, arguably the most emotionally grounded of the trilogy, completes his arc from a cynical, self-interested wanderer to a devoted leader and partner. His transformation ends with clarity, not ambiguity. Leia evolves from princess to revolutionary, to moral heart of the rebellion. She has found her place, her cause, and her family. She no longer needs a character arc. She is the arc's result. And Luke, whose entire mythology centers on learning, failing, understanding, and transcending, ends ROTJ as the first Jedi of a new, wiser generation. He has achieved the emotional maturity the old order lacked. He has no next lesson to learn. Continuing his story requires undoing what ROTJ perfected. That's the paradox of sequels. To create new drama, you must destabilize old resolution. To push character arcs forward, you must reopen wounds that ROTJ intentionally healed. To introduce new threats, you must negate the meaning of the final victory the audience celebrated. And fundamentally, you must re-break a galaxy that the saga already stitched back together. That isn't narrative expansion. It's narrative subtraction, taking away what was already earned to justify telling more chapters. The Force itself reaches its thematic endpoint in ROTJ. For 3 films, the Force is portrayed as a spiritual struggle between internal darkness and internal light, mirrored by external power structures. Luke's rejection of violence in the Emperor's throne room resolves that dichotomy. He doesn't defeat evil through domination, he defeats it through refusal. That moment redefines the Jedi in a way that aligns with the idealistic roots of the franchise. It harmonizes the Force, and if the Force is finally balanced, any sequel must invent artificial imbalance, cheapening the balance achieved. The Sith, too, are conclusively extinguished. This is crucial. The Sith are not an organization in the OT, they are the cosmic, antagonistic principle of the entire saga. Defeating the Sith ends the moral conflict of Star Wars. When Anakin kills Palpatine and sacrifices himself, the Sith philosophy collapses. Its chain of succession breaks, its influence evaporates, its dogma disintegrates. Continuing the story requires resurrecting the very evil the narrative declared permanently defeated. The saga's philosophical structure cannot continue without breaking its own cosmic rules. Even the political narrative ends with decisive clarity. The rebellion's victory doesn't merely represent military success, it symbolizes the restoration of autonomy, justice, and hope. A galaxy liberated from tyranny celebrates not because the Empire lost a skirmish, but because the entire moral order of the universe has been corrected. To continue the story, writers must erase that correction, re-corrupt the government, re-oppress the people, re-empower the villains. And by doing so, they retroactively weaken the significance of ROTJ's ending. The emotional impact of ROTJ's finale also cannot be recreated or followed. The image of Luke standing alone on Endor, watching the spirits of Obi-Wan, Yoda and his father, now redeemed, creates a final emotional symmetry that caps the Skywalker family saga. It answers every internal question. It resolves the psychological fractures of the characters. It creates a sense of cosmic unity. And most importantly, it communicates closure visually, without dialogue. The trilogy ends with catharsis, not tension. There is no emotional thread left to pull. In addition to completing the emotional arcs, ROTJ closes the thematic structure of Lucas's myth. The prequels later showed that the Jedi Order fell due to hubris, institutional blindness, and detachment from compassion. ROTJ transforms Luke into the antidote, someone who rises above the failings of dogma to rediscover the true heart of the Jedi. His final choice in the throne room breaks the cycle of violence the Jedi themselves helped perpetuate. This thematic correction is the entire point of the 6-film saga. Continuing beyond that point means reopening the wound the story has already healed. And the celebration scenes, often misunderstood as simple epilogue, carry the weight of mythic resolution. These moments symbolize the restoration of harmony on a grand scale. They are the reward for the galaxy's suffering. They are the exhale after a lifetime of holding breath. They do not imply new conflict. They imply the end of conflict. They are the credits roll on an entire era of storytelling. The reason nothing after ROTJ could match it isn't a matter of quality, direction, writing, or fan expectation. It is structural. ROTJ was built to finish the myth. Everything afterward, by definition, is supplementary. The expanded universe explored the aftermath with creativity, but even its most ambitious stories existed outside the mythological spine Lucas completed. The Disney sequels attempted to restart the saga, but in doing so they necessarily undermined the finality of ROTJ. The Emperor lived, the balance broke, the Skywalkers suffered, the galaxy collapsed again. These developments weren't just controversial, they were incompatible with the narrative architecture Lucas designed. ROTJ is the real ending because it completes everything Star Wars was originally about. It closes every character arc, resolves every philosophical thread, and delivers the emotional, symbolic, and mythological finality the story promised. Nothing after it could match it, because nothing after it was supposed to exist. The saga didn't end because it ran out of ideas. It ended because it completed its purpose. And when a myth completes its purpose, continuing it doesn't enrich it. It only proves how perfect the ending already was.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.